Hello beloved souls, thank you for tuning into the Spiritual Podcasts channel. This channel is all about good vibes, positive energy, and meaningful conversations. To keep this space welcoming for everyone, we kindly ask that comments stay respectful, kind, and in the spirit of the content shared here. We reserve the right to delete any comments that don't align with this intention. No hard feelings, just protecting the vibe. Thanks for being here and spreading the light. Please be cautious of anyone claiming to represent Spiritual Podcast and asking you for money, donations, or personal information. We will never ask you for money through comments, messages, or DMs. All official updates and content come only from this channel. If you see suspicious activity, please report it immediately. Stay safe and thank you for being part of our community. If you enjoy the video and its content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Please be kind to other viewers of the channel. The video is about to start.
Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've been feeling like the ground beneath your feet is constantly shifting, not just, in the news headlines, but really intensely and personally, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. We were given quite a dense stack of sources, philosophical, psychological.
Very dense.
All focused on navigating transformation. And it's not just theory, is it? It's about the practical sort of day-to-day work required to find some sanity, some stability in what these sources, well, they all seem to describe it as a profound, great crisis.
That's absolutely right. And our mission today really is to act as your guides through this pretty intense blueprint for change. The sources argue we're not just observing history, we're actually living through a globally accelerated transition, like intense labor pains.
Right.
And critically, they frame this not as some insurmountable problem, but more like a journey, broken down into, manageable but still challenging dimensions.
It feels like the ultimate nested crisis, They zoom right in from the macro, the big picture, down to the micro.
Precisely. Making sure that you, the listener, understand exactly where you stand in all this transition. Exactly. We start really broad. The great Earth that shelters us, the environmental shifts, the planetary changes that are, undeniable now.
Can't ignore those.
Then we narrow down a bit to society. With its huge potential, yes, but also its glaring deficiencies, its divisions, which just seem magnified daily, don't they?
They really do.
Next, we step into the most immediate sphere, the family. Where all these pressures kind of manifest as what the sources call impossibilities.
Impossibilities, wow. And then finally, the smallest dimension, but maybe the most crucial one.
The individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, the material. It keeps circling back to that core, inescapable question that honestly, only you can answer. How do you choose to pass through this crisis?
Right.
Are you going to be defined by the chaos around you, or are you going to be defined by your conscious response to it?
And speaking of the scale of this whole planetary transition, the sources pull from some historical spiritual philosophy, specifically referencing 19th century European spiritual texts. Kardec, for instance. Kardec. They speak directly to this era of transformation we're in.
Yeah, and this is where the sheer magnitude of our current moment really hits home. Kardec's text speaks of the time for fundamental transformation arriving.
Yeah, okay.
And the Earth itself needing to elevate its spiritual place, its energetic place, you can say, in the hierarchy of worlds. But, and this is the critical key for you listening, this elevation is emphatically not passive. It's not automatic.
So we can't just sit back on the emotional sidelines, waiting for some cosmic upgrade while humanity just stays stuck.
Exactly. Stuck.
Yeah.
That sounds like spiritual inertia, doesn't it?
It really does.
It is the definition of inertia. The sources are incredibly blunt about this.
Yeah.
They state the Earth won't evolve while humanity remains morally and intellectually stationary, stuck in the comfort zone of emotional immobility.
Oof. Comfort zone of emotional immobility.
Yeah. We are the active ingredient in this evolution. If we aren't changing individually and collectively, then nothing external is going to fundamentally shift to save us from the consequences of our current path.
Makes sense.
This is why the sources identify us explicitly as the workers of the last hour. It's a call to immediate, serious, urgent moral and intellectual work.
That urgency really reframes how we look at all the discomfort we're feeling, doesn't it? If we define crisis like the sources do, not as an ending, but as an event that provokes necessary change, overdue change, then the instability we feel is just a signpost telling us the old model is, well, collapsing.
We live in what the philosophers call the interstice, gap.
The gap, okay.
Yeah, imagine being mid-leap, right? You've pushed off the cliff of the old way of doing things, the old models.
Right.
But you haven't yet landed on the solid ground of the new way. The crisis exists right there in that critical time between the old model, which is frankly utterly exhausted, no longer fit for purpose.
Definitely feels that way sometimes.
And the new model, which, well, it hasn't yet been explicitly qualified or defined or even widely accepted enough to really guide us right now.
That explains so much, that profound crisis of meaning so many people feel. If our political system, our economic structures, our relationship models, if they're all exhausted, like you said, but the replacement hasn't really arrived yet, we're just suspended in this sort of existential dread. It's like a vacuum of identity.
And that vacuum is terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the old system, however flawed it was, at least it provided familiar guideposts.
Sure.
Now, those are gone. And since we're called to be these workers of the last hour, right here in this gap, well, we need the tools to build a new foundation.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The very first foundation we seem to need, according to the sources, is this grandeur of soul, which, I mean, that immediately runs up against the extreme division we see everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we build a new world when we can barely agree on basic facts sometimes?
This is, perhaps the most challenging part of the material, because it demands we fundamentally shift our relationship with conflict itself.
Okay.
The sources argue that God actually desires human diversity. They use this wonderful analogy, that God does not want a cloned and tedious eucalyptus forest.
Huh. I like that.
Right. Diversity is the divine intention. So discord, disagreement on specific topics, that's natural. It's human variation. It doesn't automatically stamp you as a being devoted to evil, as the source puts it.
That's power. It's like permission to disagree. The problem then isn't the diversity itself.
No.
It's the management of it. We lack that grandeur of soul needed to handle human difference maturely.
Exactly. Grandeur of soul means recognizing that the existence of someone who vehemently disagrees with you doesn't somehow invalidate your own existence or your own truth.
Right.
The invitation here is radical. Move from being agents of conflict, division, hate, and become agents of transformation instead. By seeing others not as enemies to be fought, but simply as brothers in diversity, even the ones who drive you crazy.
But our current global society seems pathologically addicted to the exact opposite approach. We've totally fallen into this trap of binary thinking, haven't we? Where everything complex gets reduced to just good versus evil.
The sources call this tendency the carimbo, the stamp, or like the branding iron.
I'm a rimbo. Okay.
Yeah. Society, or maybe just our lower nature, demands that all these complex issues get flattened into two opposing poles, so we can easily assign good versus evil, right versus wrong.
Yeah.
It's like turning, I don't know, a 5-dimensional chess game into a cartoon brawl. Skeletor against the Thundercats or something.
Yeah, Tom against Jerry. It simplifies everything. And once you have that stamp, that carimbo, once you reduce a complex human being to just one side of a simple duality, you can use a single point of disagreement, politics, religion, lifestyle, whatever, to just stamp that person as fundamentally bad. Or stupid. Or dangerous.
And that reductionism, the sources say, is the death of fraternity. It lets us reject the entire person based on like one channel in their subscription package we don't like.
That's a great analogy.
And the sources quote Sister Rosaria here from a related text, which is just profoundly challenging for our polarized world. She says, "What is asked of you in this world is that you support one another, and it is what you least manage to do."
Support one another. We hear that word support, and immediately I think our modern ears translate it as tolerance.
Right, like gritting your teeth.
Yeah, like I have to grit my teeth and just swallow something I don't like or put up with someone annoying. It's passive endurance.
And passive endurance is, it's the low bar, isn't it? The source urges us to really deepen the meaning of support. The original concept they reference is support.
Supporte.
Which means actively giving the foundation the support for the other person to exist as a legitimate subject, as themselves.
Wow.
It's actively upholding their right to be different. even if their choices make you deeply uncomfortable. You're not just enduring their existence, you're actually affirming your humanity.
That's very different. The analogy they use for this is perfect, comparing a family, or really any group, to a subscription TV package.
Yeah, you pay for the whole bundle,
Yeah.
right? That package inevitably includes channels you genuinely do not like, maybe a shopping network, endless sports you never watch.
Guilty.
But they're part of the bundle. Similarly, you might find certain traits in a relative or a colleague really grating, annoying, but they are intrinsically linked to other virtues, other qualities that maybe you do value or at least need to acknowledge.
So the challenge is to stop using that simplistic stamp, the Karimbo,
Yes.
and recognize that everyone, even those who push all our buttons, they have complexity, virtues and flaws, competencies and weaknesses.
And the sources suggest pretty directly that if you can't see that light and shadow, that complexity in other people, it's probably because you refuse to see that same complexity in yourself. You're just projecting your own internal division outward.
Ouch. That's the ultimate diagnostic tool, isn't it? As the source reminds us, the mouth speaks of what the heart is full of.
Exactly. If we're constantly transmitting division, conflict, judgment, it's a direct reflection of the unresolved internal conflict in our own soul.
That refusal to accept complexity, inside and out, sets us up perfectly for the next dimension, the family. If this grand transition is shaking society, how does it actually show up where we live, in the home?
Well, the shift from the macro, the societal level, down to the family level, it shows the identical pattern, really, the exhausted old model crashing into the not yet qualified new model.
Okay.
The sources give us a historical perspective here. They acknowledge the previous family model, it rightly needed transformation. It was often characterized by, the subordination of the feminine.
Sure.
Lack of access for kids to their fathers sometimes. And critically, the tolerance of domestic violence, often just dismissed with, oh, it's just the way it was.
That model definitely needed dismantling, no question. But the big caveat, the historical mistake, according to this material, is that the historical pendulum often swings too violently. It destroys the entire structure.
He'd call it throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
The dysfunctional authoritarian parts get removed, thankfully.
Right.
But sometimes, so do the functional aspects that provided order, emotional structure, clear boundaries, maybe some non-negotiable standards.
And the result is the current crisis. The old model failed, but the new, maybe more permissive model isn't quite qualified yet to guide us.
Exactly. And this leads to an intense crisis of meaning and a crisis of identities, which the source directly links to the current global epidemic we see of anxiety and, tragically, suicide.
That connection is incredibly sobering, linking that lack of identity structure in the home directly to profound psychological distress. Which brings us to that powerful real-world story shared in the sources about the grieving mother at the airport.
Ah, yes. This story just perfectly illustrates the modern breakdown of parental boundaries and maybe a fundamental misunderstanding of privacy, especially with minors.
What happened?
Well, the expert encountered a mother who had recently, tragically, lost her 16-year-old son to suicide. And when asked if she'd missed any signs, she was adamant no. She emphasized that she respected his autonomy and his privacy completely.
And that's a philosophy so many well-meaning parents hold today, isn't it? Treat your teenager like a fully sovereign adult. Respect their space.
And that's exactly where the source material draws a very hard line. The expert challenged the mother, stating that privacy is a gradual and tested conquest by responsible parents.
Wow. Gradual and tested.
Yeah, he was very clear. In the digital world we live in now, what parents might call privacy is often viewed by external predatory forces and even organized digital crime as an opportunity. An open door for destruction and manipulation. He pointed out, quite pointedly, that those who pay the bills for the phone, the internet, the infrastructure, usually the parents, they have the true privacy, until the child has actually demonstrated the maturity to handle that sovereignty.
That is a very harsh lesson, and frankly, pretty controversial for modern parenting styles that often prioritize being a friend over providing structure. How does the source square demanding that level of intrusion with the need for kids to eventually develop independence?
The key is in that word tested. Independence is earned, demonstrated, not just granted automatically at a certain age.
Okay.
So the mother, consumed by grief, but also seeking some kind of resolution, she was given this painful, almost forensic therapeutic instruction. Go back, check the phone, check the apps, the social media, check the drawers, the pockets. Not to assign blame, but to find clarity.
And what did you find?
It was, as you'd expect, overwhelmingly painful. The mother later communicated back that she had discovered her son had been giving explicit signals for a year and a half.
A year and a half?
Yeah. Notes, posts, online interactions, signals she had completely missed because of her interpretation of privacy as this absolute non-negotiable right for a minor. The tragedy was compounded by those missed warnings.
So the purpose wasn't blame. What was the final takeaway for her then?
The final, quite laconic reply from the expert was yes, because now you know exactly what you must do for your other two children. Support them, structure them, and be present. This whole anecdote is just a powerful counterpoint to the idea that maturity somehow happens automatically.
Which is another core idea the sources really challenge, isn't it? That emotional maturity absolutely does not correlate automatically with your age.
Not at all. It's just entirely a personal choice of repertory. Maturity is a skill set you actually decide to adopt and practice.
Like choosing tools from a toolbox.
Exactly. And we see stunning examples of immaturity completely divorced from age. The source mentions an academic anecdote from Stanford University, right? Not just anywhere, but Stanford.
Right, top tier.
Where these highly intelligent students found Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy too long to read.
Too long. Dante.
Yeah. And when they disagreed with the author's philosophy, they simply stated, "I disagree." But they couldn't articulate a single argument to support why they disagreed.
Wow. The expectation that you can just disagree with, the father of Western literature and morality without doing the work to build a counter-argument, that's terrifying, actually. It's intellectual immaturity in its purest form.
And we see the practical fallout filtering into everyday life.
Yeah.
Especially employment. The sources mention cases of young people showing up to job interviews with their parents.
No, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the parents feel they need to step in and excuse their adult child's shyness or lack of preparation.
Oh, dear.
This kind of behavior, it just reveals that missing equilibrium in the family system.
So if the old model was maybe the barracks, total authoritative suffocation, producing obedience, but often stunting emotional growth, and the modern permissive model risks becoming the hotel total abandonment, where the kid gets food and shelter, but maybe no structure, no moral compass.
Yeah, basically.
Then the goal is neither of those extremes.
No. The ultimate aim is a home, forged in equilibrium. A place that actively supports the unique existence of each person, yes, but also demands maturity, accountability, personal responsibility. It's where love and limits have to coexist.
Okay. That moves us perfectly from those outward behaviors of immaturity to the internal mechanics of transformation.
Yeah.
How does this demanded maturity actually take root in the collective, in the individual consciousness?
Right. This brings us to this profound idea of consciousness migration. The idea is the collective consciousness has to shift, to migrate from alienation, that sort of disconnected, self-centered state, to genuine consciousness, aware, present. But crucially, the sources clarify this big transition doesn't happen when every single person magically reaches the same level at the same time.
Ooh, that would take forever.
Exactly.
Oh.
It happens when the number of the lucid, the aware, the conscious ones, when that number begins to surpass the number of the alienated.
A tipping point.
It's a moral tipping point, driven by quality of character, by intention, not just sheer numbers. A smaller, highly aware segment of the population can actually start to change the entire energetic and ethical trajectory of the whole collective.
So even if you feel like you're just one small person doing your internal work, that effort actually contributes disproportionately to reaching that tipping point.
Absolutely. Your inner work matters immensely. And to support this shift, the sources get into the psychological concept of imprinting.
Imprinting, okay.
They reference the work of a Reverend Hinger, who apparently developed this theory of behavioral imprinting about 100 years before modern psychology formally proved it, studying early childhood development.
Ahead of his time.
Yeah. He looked at children found in the wilderness, feral children, and realized that if the imprinting of basic human characteristics, things like language, values, a sense of order, if that didn't happen during a crucial early window,
right,
those traits could never be fully regained, regardless of how much therapy or intervention happened later.
That's the psychological equivalent of the spiritual idea. Get the foundations right early, or the whole structure will always be unstable.
Spot on. The source uses a pretty relatable analogy here. If a spirit arriving is like the newest iPhone 16 Pro Max, super fast, powerful, massive potential,
Right.
the family's function isn't just to provide the physical case, the body. is to download the apps.
Yaps.
The moral values, the principles, the necessary order of human life. And that takes repetition, troubleshooting, consistent early application. The message for parents is crystal clear. It is not too early to start imprinting values.
The earlier the better.
The earlier those core resources are built, the better equipped the individuals can be for navigating a society in crisis.
This idea of imprinting, of what gets downloaded, leads us to a really fascinating discussion in the sources about predispositions morbidus. This notion of inherent predispositions towards illness, physical or psychological, and how our behavior activates them.
Yeah, this is a powerful blend of spiritual philosophy and what modern science now calls epigenetics.
Right, epigenetics.
Drawing from both spiritual texts, like those attributed to André Louise, and hard modern genetics, the source highlights a crucial statistic. Only about 1%, just 1% of diseases are strictly immutably genetic, locked in.
Only 1%, that's tiny.
Tiny. The vast remainder, the 99%, is determined by behavior. Our choices trigger those potential predispositions we might carry.
So we might be born with potential weaknesses, physical or psychic vulnerabilities. But it's our daily choices, diet, emotional processing, lifestyle, thoughts that determine if those switches get flipped on.
It's the concept of free planting, but obligatory harvest. We have free will to plant whatever seeds we choose through our actions and thoughts. But we must face the consequences, the harvest of those behaviors. And the sources take this even a step further, suggesting that sometimes the very onset of a major chronic disease can actually be seen as a kind of cure.
A cure? How so?
It's like a painful, unavoidable invitation to consciousness that maybe the soul had been aggressively resisting. It forces the individual to stop, to reassess, to change their life trajectory in a way they wouldn't have otherwise.
Wow. So the disease itself becomes the catalyst for the internal transformation the person couldn't or wouldn't choose on their own.
Potentially, yes.
And that change, that shift from fighting reality to accepting the need for transformation, that leads us perfectly into the archetype of internal revolution.
Yeah.
The shift from the reactive ego to the fully conscious self.
And the sources use the story of Paul's conversion, Saul of Tarsus becoming Paul, as the ultimate example of this kind of profound internal transformation.
Okay, Paul.
Paul was, by any measure, the ideal candidate for his later mission, wasn't he? Focused, incredibly determined, multilingual, a doctor of the law, highly qualified.
The ultimate high achiever. Top of his class.
Precisely. But he was trained to see signs according to rigid dogma, religious ritual, the rito, as the source calls it.
What's a rito?
And in his profound pride, his vanity, he completely failed to recognize the Messiah standing right in front of him. His highly functional ego was just captured by the letter of the law, the rito, rather than the spirit of the law, the alma of the soul.
He was like the super qualified CEO candidate who totally bombs the foundational interview because he's too focused on his own resume and his rigid certainty.
Absolutely. His conversion on the road to Damascus, it wasn't just a physical blinding. It was a profound shattering and surrender of that ego.
Right.
And the moment he accepts his new role, his true mission, he asks that fundamental question of the conscious being, what do you want me to do?
Not, what do I want to do with my amazing qualifications?
Exactly. It's a total shift in orientation.
That is the pivotal moment of maturity, isn't it? The fully conscious being, as Joanna de Angelis observes in the sources. She says, they neither blame, nor excuse, nor justify. They only transform.
Beautifully put.
They just look at the situation, analyze the data, and change course. Without all the time-wasting drama of self-pity or blaming others.
And before you can make that transformation, you have to stop being your own main antagonist. Which brings us to that profound psychological paradox of self-acceptance proposed by Carl Rogers.
Right, Rogers. This idea that only when you fully accept yourself can you actually change. It sounds counterintuitive at first, doesn't it? If I accept my flaws, when I just stagnate, when I just stay flawed.
That is the common misunderstanding, yeah. Rogers, who is, one of the founders of humanistic psychology, he discovered that if you are constantly at war with who you are right now, or what you were, or where you currently find yourself, you expend all your energy just fighting yourself.
Yeah.
You are perpetually your own worst enemy.
So acceptance isn't stagnation at all. It's the necessary ceasefire. It frees up the energy you need to actually make the change.
Exactly. The sources beautifully call this dynamic resignation.
Dynamic resignation, I like that.
It's not passive fatalism. It's not just giving up and saying, oh, well, this is it. Dynamic resignation means accepting what you cannot change right now. your past actions, your current body shape, your current salary, the state of your marriage, whatever it is, accepting that.
Okay.
While simultaneously developing the momentum, the focus, the resources for change later.
Can you maybe elaborate on that? Because acceptance often sounds like just giving up. What does dynamic actually look like in practice for someone who's really struggling with the dissatisfaction?
Okay, let's take dissatisfaction with your current job or financial situation.
Yeah.
Pretty common, right?
Very common.
Passive resignation says, this is my miserable fate. I hate my job. I'm broke. I'm stuck here forever. Woe is me.
Right, victim mode.
Dynamic resignation says, okay, I currently accept that this is my salary and this is my job right now.
Yeah.
I stop fighting this reality every single day because it just drains my energy. But because I accept it for now, I can now calmly apply that freed up energy to finding new training or networking or building the steps that will actually move me out of this reality in 6 months or a year.
It heals the internal division. You stop fighting yourself.
Precisely. The intense suffering we see today, the comparison culture, the deep dissatisfaction that so often stems from that refusal to accept the reality of the life you have right now compared to the life you demand instantly or the life you see on Instagram.
That internal division is healed when you stop being a perpetual victim of your present circumstances.
Okay.
So now that we've kind of charted this intense internal path for transformation, let's look outward again. How do we apply this conscious, dynamically resigned consciousness in service to others? What exactly is the work of the last hour?
Well, it starts with taking a stand for transcendent values. And the sources give us a truly provocative warning here, referencing Dante Alighieri.
Dante again.
He wrote in his Divine Comedy that the hottest places in hell, they were reserved for those spirits who remain neutral in times of crisis.
Wow. That is a massive indictment of indifference, isn't it? We should probably clarify what the sources mean by neutrality here. This isn't about taking political sides, is it?
No, emphatically not. The sources are very clear. This is not political neutrality. It's neutrality regarding transcendent values, eternal principles.
Okay.
It's failing to choose Christ or love or justice or compassion over division, hate, indifference. The choice isn't between, candidate A or candidate B. It's about aligning yourself with the model of inclusion that defines spiritual maturity.
And the sources give us 3 really powerful examples from the life of Jesus that offer the ultimate countermodel to the global trend we see today towards cancellation and binary judgment. Let's start with the Samaritan woman.
The Samaritan woman. A masterclass in inclusion, truly. Here's a woman who was effectively canceled by her society, right? She was poor, she was alone at the well, known to have a complicated romantic past.
Right. Went to the well at noon to avoid people.
Exactly. The hottest time of day, specifically to avoid the judgment, the stares. She expected what? Hatred? Judgment? Maybe lust? Instead, Jesus offers her this incomprehensible look of love, as the source puts it.
And crucially, he reveals the details of her life. He sees her reality, but without condemning her past actions. He saw her present intention, her seeking, and offered acceptance.
He provided the ultimate paradigm of acceptance. He recognized the subject, the human being beneath the labels, despite the social stains society had placed upon her. We see a similar dynamic with Zacchaeus, the tax collector.
Right, Zacchaeus, an economic traitor in the eyes of his people, collaborating with the Romans, rich, but totally alienated.
Despised. Yet when he climbs that sycamore tree, it's a desperate, slightly comical move, isn't it? Just seeking to be seen above the crowd. Jesus chooses his house. He recognizes the intention beneath the socially despised circumstances. Jesus consistently affirmed the dignity of the person, even when that person was operating within a corrupt system. He focused on the soul's potential, not the ego's social classification.
And my favorite example, maybe, of active seeking is blind Bartimaeus. He really demonstrates the individual's role in their own transformation.
Bartimaeus, he shows us that spiritual healing isn't just automatically granted like passive welfare. We often have to actively trigger the desire and the permission for the cure.
How so?
Well, he was yelling in a crowd full of other people also wanting attention, wanting healing. He was doing the spiritual equivalent of pure marketing to get noticed.
Yeah.
He had to cast off his comfortable cloak, the source of his identity, his livelihood as a beggar, and scream for attention. It shows that we as individuals seeking salvation or healing or change, we have to play an active, sometimes messy, sometimes loud role in demanding it from the universe, from God.
This theme, making an active choice, even when circumstances feel desperate, it seems central to the discussion of prayer and alignment in the sources. They're very clear. God needs to be the first alternative, not the last resort, when everything else fails.
Yeah, the anecdotes shared by the source expert are really meant to illustrate exactly that shift in focus. One story involved a friend diagnosed with terminal cancer, who was only focused on the grim medical prognosis.
Understandable.
Of course. But the expert told him, look, if you don't want to die, talk to your father. Tell him directly you don't want to die. Just that simple active act of articulating the desire to the highest source first, before resigning to other alternatives. It shifted his perspective from passive victimhood to active agent in his own healing journey.
And the other anecdote about the critical family health crisis while the expert was mid-flight, that reinforces the same point, that profound connection.
Right. In that moment of just extreme contained desperation, you're trapped on a plane, you can't communicate, you feel helpless.
Terrible feel.
The expert just prayed, basically. Just let me land and have her be okay, and I will do whatever you want. It was a complete surrender of control, combined with an active demand for intervention. And the moment he landed, he got the news. The family member had unexpectedly left the ICU.
Wow.
And this led to a profound internal reorganization for him. He realized, he said, he could no longer look for money or insurance or contacts first. He now seeks God first, trusting that that alignment brings clarity to all the subsequent practical steps that need to be taken.
The profound comfort in that, I think, is that our internal, even wordless anguish is fully seen. God knows our pain, our thoughts, even when we can't find the articulate words, because as the source says, he searches our hearts.
Yes.
Our internal dialogue is fully audible to the divine.
It connects us right back to the work of the last hour, doesn't it? If we're struggling to find sense in the external chaos, we have to anchor ourselves to that truth. We are seen, and our internal work is the true measure of our contribution.
Okay, finally, we need to redefine what victory actually looks like in this time of crisis, because the sources sharply critique the material world's definition of the extraordinary.
Oh, absolutely. The world constantly tells us the extraordinary is defined by external metrics, doesn't it? Fame, wealth, having more followers than the next person, being better than someone else.
Yeah, the comparison game.
We chase visibility, external success, because that's how the world validates itself. But this relentless focus, the sources argue, leads to a complete loss of what is truly and eternally extraordinary.
So what is truly extraordinary then, according to these texts?
It's the daily, often unseen work of love and responsibility. It's coming home day after day to care for loved ones who might be draining or demanding or unwell.
That takes strength.
Immense strength. It's meeting regularly with like-minded souls to support each other in this transformation journey. It's taking the difficult, consistent steps towards self-modification, changing those ingrained habits, or just pausing your incredibly busy day to genuinely meditate or connect or hear a word of spiritual guidance. These are the truly extraordinary moments that accumulate into profound change.
So the final redefinition of victory, it's being a victor of the Christ, or maybe a victor of love, of principle. Even if you are entirely unknown, uncelebrated, lacking any public visibility.
Exactly. Because the work of redemption within your own home, within your own intimate relationships, and crucially within your own soul, that is often far more valuable, far more lasting than any public acclaim you could ever possibly receive.
That internal transformation is the real proof.
It is. Which brings us to the final, most personal takeaway from this whole body of work we've explored today. Remember this: your past does not define you. The mistakes you made, the people who hurt you, who betrayed you, they do not define who you are now.
So what does define you?
What defines you is what you choose to do with it. Now, today.
Okay.
The monumental victory, perhaps the greatest victory in this era of transition, is simply choosing not to repeat the abuse, the trauma, or the cycle of brokenness that might have been inflicted upon you. That conscious choice, often made in private suffering and silence, that validates your journey. And it contributes more than you know to the great elevation of the earth.
We have talked about the intense responsibility required to navigate this era, and we've established that, well, the mouth speaks of what the heart is full of. So if we are called to be instruments of peace in a world that is so aggressively defined by division, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought, something for your own personal inquiry.
What is one painful, unaddressed internal conflict you need to accept, dynamically resign yourself to, and begin to transform within yourself today? Maybe it's a source of deep insecurity or pride or a harsh judgment you hold. Because the moment you start to heal that source of your own internal division, you immediately stop projecting it, seeing it, and judging it so harshly in others. Heal your own division, and you automatically stop propagating it out into the world.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful and blessed day.